Chapter 38. Come aboard? Zeus arrived at St. Catherine Docks under the veil of dusk. He brought the Centaur 32X to a smooth halt in a narrow alley off Mews Street, its engine purring briefly before cutting to silence. The moment he dismounted, the bike's defense protocols activated. Locks snapped into place and its sensors engaged. Even in plain sight, few would dare approach it. Without hesitation, Zeus raised his arm and fired the wrist-mounted grapple gun. The cable hissed as it shot skyward, latching onto the edge of a nearby rooftop. A moment later, he was airborne, ascending quickly until his boots landed softly atop the building of a restaurant. From this vantage point, he had a clear view of the marina. Below, sleek vessels bobbed gently in their berths. Pleasure yachts, private cruisers, and vintage boats, all moored by the wealthy for their leisurely Thames excursions. Lights twinkled from the decks, casting shimmering reflections across the water. Security at the docks was formidable. Uniformed guards patrolled the boardwalks at regular intervals, their movements sharp and alert. Over the water, AI surveillance drones glided silently along programmed routes, their scanning lights sweeping the surface in soft arcs. Their design was sleek, built specifically for marine intrusion detection. Capable of spotting anyone attempting to infiltrate the docks from below, whether swimming or using submersible equipment, Zeus scanned the skyline, eyes darting between buildings and airspace, searching for any sign of the Harpy VTOL. But the HUD came up empty, no thermal trace, no movement, not even a flicker of distortion. Was I late, or was Paul winding me up? Zeus thought to himself. He tried re-establishing contact, but there was nothing. The call he'd received earlier had vanished the moment it ended, deleted automatically, leaving no trace. Standard protocol whenever Gina sent sensitive messages. Then, without warning, a new message blinked onto the HUD. Look out to the Thames. Zeus turned, pivoting smoothly on the rooftop, just as a faint shimmer rippled over the Thames. A second later, the Harpy decloaked, its sleek, angular frame emerging like a phantom, hovering silently above the river. The vertical thrusters hissed softly, sending concentric ripples dancing across the water's surface. He didn't hesitate. Raising his arm, he fired the grapple once more and launched himself to a higher rooftop that offered a direct line of sight to the aircraft. The Harpy's side door hissed open, and there stood Paul, one hand gripping the overhead rail, motioning him in. Zeus broke into a sprint, boots pounding across the rooftop. As he reached the edge, he leapt into the open air, firing his hookshot mid-jump. The grapple latched onto the interior frame of the Harpy with a satisfying click, and the line reeled him in at high speed. As he neared the entrance, Paul reached out and grabbed his arm, hauling him along with practiced ease. The moment both boots hit the deck, Paul slammed the side door shut behind them. Paul turned to the cockpit, his voice firm and controlled. "All right, Artyom, he's in. Bring the cloak back online." "Da, Paul," the pilot replied in a thick Russian accent, his hands already moving across the controls. With a soft beep, he pressed a button on the console. Outside, the Harpy shimmered for a brief moment, before vanishing from sight once more, fully cloaked and undetectable to the public eye. "Welcome back, Zeus," Paul said, a hint of a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Things are bound to get intriguing now that you're with us." Thanks, Zeus replied, adjusting his gauntlet slightly. Does Barry know I'm joining you on this one? Paul hesitated. Yeah. About that. His expression betrayed him, an awkward mix of guilt and apprehension. Clearly, the conversation hadn't happened yet. Right on cue, the door to the sleeping quarters slid open, and Barry stepped out, eyes fixed on the tablet in his hands. Paul, before we proceed with the Heinrich op, we should go over, He stopped mid-sentence, his gaze locking onto Zeus. The shock on his face was immediate. He clearly hadn't been expecting him on this mission. Zeus gave a nod, attempting to diffuse the tension. All right, he said evenly. Barry's expression darkened. What the hell is he doing here, Paul? He demanded, his tone sharp and brimming with disbelief. I invited him to tag along, Paul said, waving it off like it was no big deal. We could use the extra help while Gina's away. Barry didn't look amused. He straightened slightly and began to lecture. First of all, Paul groaned and rolled his eyes. Oh God, here we go. Barry powered on, voice firm. Gina left me in charge during her absence. That means I decide who joins any assignment. Second, if you wanted Zeus with us, you should have consulted me first. And third, no, we don't need Zeus for this mission. Then he turned to Zeus, his expression unreadable. But since he's here now, I suppose we can make use of the extra support. Zeus smirked and raised a hand, flipping him the middle finger with mock sweetness. Love you too, Barry. Just so you both know, Barry said sharply, this is going in my report to Gina. She'll want to be fully informed. Doesn't your word, search answer sheet go in the report too? Paul quipped with a grin. Barry ignored the jab, choosing to stay focused on the task at hand. Anyway, he said briskly, since Zeus is with us, we'll need to go over the mission plan again. He tapped a command on his tablet and synced it with the Harpy's main computer. A soft hum filled the cabin as a holographic 3D display flickered to life in front of them, casting pale blue light across their faces. The Thames Basin and the surrounding docks slowly rotated in midair, layered with markers, movement paths, and intel tags. Barry began speaking while standing beside the glowing 3D map. Right. So, you'll remember we captured Heinrich Fischer and handed him over to the police? Zeus leaned against the wall, arms folded. Yeah, not exactly how I imagined starting the new year. Same, Paul muttered. Barry pressed on. After we turned over Heinrich and the rest of the death claws, they were all processed and sent to Hollow Gate Remand Facility. Heinrich was scheduled to be transferred to a high-security prison by the end of the week. He paused, glancing at each of them before continuing. But he didn't make it. He tapped his tablet, and a grainy security feed appeared in the air, time-stamped from 3 days ago. It showed Heinrich pacing in a bare, reinforced isolation cell. We had him placed in solitary to prevent him from making deals with other inmates, or getting shanked by any surviving death claws with a grudge. For 3 days, everything seemed normal. But sometime between 1500 and 1600, the camera feed went offline. No warning, no alarms. Barry swiped to the next clip. When it came back online, he was gone. The new feed showed an empty cell No Heinrich, no struggle. Just a ragged, gaping hole in the floor, disappearing into darkness. Someone knew exactly where he was going to be and exactly when to extract him. This wasn't improvised. It was planned, and with precision. Zeus stepped forward, eyes narrowing at the footage. Underground escape. That takes time, equipment, and inside knowledge. Whoever pulled this off didn't just want him out, they needed him. Barry nodded grimly. We're not dealing with amateurs. Paul stepped in, tapping the display to bring up a new set of footage. Fortunately, Daedalus managed to recover CCTV recordings showing Heinrich emerging from the sewers and moving through the city with impressive discretion. No sign of panic. He knew exactly where he was going. The footage showed Heinrich, dirt-streaked and hooded, weaving through side streets and ducking past security drones. He moved with purpose, eventually arriving at a small industrial pier in Wandsworth. A refuse boat was already waiting. Its markings, identifying it as part of the city's waste disposal fleet, used to transport rubbish to an external recycling facility. The moment Heinrich boarded, Zeus leaned in, his eyes locking onto something unusual. Pause the footage, he said sharply. The image froze mid-frame. Heinrich was stepping onto the boat, but in his right hand he carried a sleek, dark briefcase. He's got something in his hand, Zeus said, frowning. That wasn't in his cell. Barry moved closer and quickly manipulated the zoom function. The image sharpened slightly, revealing the briefcase's distinct angular design. Yeah, I spotted that too, Barry muttered. That's a Mirage Vault 12. Paul raised an eyebrow. Sounds expensive? It is, Barry replied. Illegal too, designed for high-level smuggling operations. The case has embedded pulse jammers that subtly interfere with detection equipment. Scanners read false signals or see nothing at all. He tapped the display again, cycling through an internal schematic of the suitcase. It also uses holographic compartment projection. So if it gets scanned, it'll show innocuous items, like food or clothes, and the smart alloy frame can adjust its density to avoid setting off weight-sensitive alarms. Zeus folded his arms, his expression hardening. Someone didn't just break him out, they equipped him for something major. That case isn't for a getaway, it's for delivery. Agreed, Barry said grimly. Whatever's inside, it's valuable. Dangerous, even. And now it's out in the wild. Barry tapped his comm unit, his tone sharp and urgent. Daedalus, where is Heinrich's boat now? He has something that cannot be allowed to leave the city. Within seconds, the display shifted. Satellite footage of the Thames flickered into view above the mission table. Daedalus, an elite jacker, and the Spartans' dedicated digital support zoomed in on a fast-moving vessel, its heat signature unmistakable against the cool river. There, Paul said, pointing. Heading west, fast. Barry's jaw tightened. He's already past Richmond. If he reaches the open waterways beyond the Greater London perimeter, we'll lose him. He turned to the front of the cabin. Artyom, set a course for the Thames, just outside Hampton Wick. We need to get there before that boat does. Da, Commander, the pilot replied calmly, fingers dancing over the console as he punched in the coordinates. Plotting course now. ETA, 6 minutes. The Harpy adjusted its heading with a smooth, silent shift, slicing through the clouds at speed. Zeus stepped up beside the others, checking his equipment. If we're pulling him off that boat, we'll need to hit fast and clean. Barry nodded. Agreed. No room for mistakes. We intercept before he hits the outskirts. Barry stood silently for a moment, eyes fixed on the flickering display of Heinrich's boat as it sped down the Thames. The low hum of the Harpy's engines filled the cabin, but in his mind, everything else had gone quiet. What the hell is in that case? He crossed his arms, brow furrowing. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths, not just to free Heinrich from a high-security remand facility, but to equip him with a Mirage Vault 12. That wasn't the kind of kit you used for petty contraband. This event was deliberate, coordinated, expensive. Was it tech, weapons, data? Whatever it was, it mattered enough for someone to dig a tunnel, bribe insiders, hijack security feeds, and now risk open pursuit along one of the most monitored rivers in the country. The Jones brothers then began suiting up, methodically equipping themselves with the weapons and gear required for a covert aquatic insertion. Their armour had been outfitted with modular scuba attachments, rebreathers, pressurized propulsion fins, and stealth seal plating tailored for underwater infiltration in the murky currents of the Thames. As they checked their gear, Barry spoke, his tone calm but authoritative. Remember, we can't be certain who's on that boat. It could be a criminal crew smuggling Heinrich out, or just innocent waste management workers being forced to cooperate at gunpoint. He loaded a fresh magazine of non-lethal rounds into his weapon. So, we play it safe. Non-lethal only. No unnecessary casualties. Paul gave a brief nod, double-checking the mini EMP device secured to his thigh. That works for me, remarks Zeus, since Apollo was linked into my suit, restricting my weaponry to non-lethal. We'll also be placing an EMP charge on the keel, Barry continued, his voice clipped and focused. Once it goes off, it'll disable the propulsion systems and any onboard electronics. No way for them to call for backup, and no chance of escape. He tapped the holographic map of the boat, highlighting its aft section. We'll approach from the rear, climb aboard quietly, and neutralize any personnel we encounter along the way. Henrik is most likely near the helm, where the captain would normally operate the vessel. That's where we'll breach. Barry glanced around the cabin, meeting each of their eyes in turn. Once we've secured the helm, we arrest him, bring him aboard the Harpy, and interrogate him. After that, we'll hand him back to the police, preferably with stricter instructions this time. Paul gave a half smile as he slotted a final piece of gear into place. Hopefully, they move him to a real prison this time, maybe one with decent Wi-Fi and an AC unit. Zeus gave a dry chuckle. Luxury treatment for London's most slippery scumbag. Your taxpayer money at work. Barry didn't laugh. He just checked the timer on the HUD. 4 minutes to drop, he said. We best check our gear functions before landing. While the Jones brothers double-checked their gear, tugging at straps, slapping mags into carbines, and murmuring final comm checks, Zeus peeled away, drawn toward the cockpit. He'd been meaning to speak with the pilot, get a feel for the person behind the controls of the multi-million-pound stealth aircraft they were about to leap from. Trust was earned, not assumed, and Zeus wasn't one to leave his life in the hands of a mystery. The corridor narrowed, the hum of the engines deepening as he approached the cockpit door. A soft hydraulic hiss greeted his entry. He stopped in his tracks. The pilot was young, startlingly so. Artyom looked barely out of his teens. No older than Connor, maybe younger by a few months. Soft features, pale skin faintly illuminated by the glow of the holographic flight instruments. A pair of noise-cancelling headphones rested lightly around his neck, one ear half covered as he focused on the readouts. Despite the youth in his face, there was a calm about him. A quiet, razor-edged composure. It didn't quite compute. "You're younger than I expected," Zeus said, stepping forward into the cramped space. "So, how did the captain find you?" Artyom didn't flinch. His hands remained steady on the yoke as he leaned back slightly in his seat, eyes still scanning the skies through the curved windscreen. "Shcho?" he replied with a grin, his Slavic accent gently colouring the words. "Are you surprised to see someone like me flying this beautiful aircraft?" He tilted his head slightly, enough to glance at Zeus with a knowing smile. "You wouldn't be the first. Plenty of soldiers twice my age give me that look, like I should be in school, not steering a Ghost-class interceptor through London's airspace." Zeus folded his arms, one brow rising with interest. Artyom continued, unfazed. "But Captain Rhodes, she's different. She doesn't just look at your record. She looks at your eyes, your fire. She doesn't care where you came from, just where she thinks you can go." There was reverence in his tone, but not blind loyalty. It was respect, forged from challenge and belief. "She sees potential," he said simply. "Even in rookies like me. And when she looks at you like that, you want to live up to it. You have to." He finally turned in his seat, giving Zeus his full attention now, one hand still casually resting on the throttle. "I've been flying for her for a year now. Before that, I was pulling parts off old jets in my uncle's hangar. Definitely a step up from wrenching oil and cleaning canopies." "Your uncle taught you to fly?" Zeus asked, voice softening. Artyom nodded, a trace of memory flickering across his face. "Yeah, sort of. He used to perform stunt shows at fairs across eastern Ukraine. Had this old decommissioned Sukhoi Su-92, loud, temperamental. Smelt like kerosene and rust. But she could still dance through the sky." He paused. One day, mid-show, he blacked out. PTSD flashback. Combat trauma from the war. I was in the co-pilot's seat, riding shotgun like always. I panicked for half a second. Then I just took the stick. Zeus narrowed his eyes, not out of doubt, but awe. "And you landed it?" Artyom shrugged modestly, though a flicker of pride broke through. Somehow, I remembered everything I'd seen him do, every move, every instinct. It felt as though my hands were no longer mine, like the plane remembered through me. He leaned back, almost embarrassed by the tale. No formal training, no simulator hours, just adrenaline, muscle memory, and maybe a bit of divine intervention. Zeus exhaled slowly. "That's incredible." Artyom gave a small nod. The local paper ran the story. Called me a miracle kid. A few days later, Captain Rhodes came knocking. Offered me a place in the Spartans before I even knew what it meant. Told me, "If you can pull a miracle from a dying sky, I want you on my team." He tapped the glowing controls. So far, not doing too poorly, eh? Zeus chuckled quietly, impressed despite himself. From what I've seen so far, Artyom, you've got true talent, and more guts than most men twice your age. Artyom's grin softened into something more genuine, boyish but grounded. Dyakuyu, Zeus, he said, his voice touched with emotion. Then, Barry's voice cut through the ambient hum of the Harpy's interior. All units, 1 minute to drop. Gear up and get to the door. We hit the Thames hard and quietly. Swim to the target vessel, no surface splashes. Artyom, once we're in the water, pull away. Stay cloaked, stay high. You're our ghost until we call for pickup. When we've secured the package, move in fast for extraction. Da, Commander, Artyom replied without hesitation, fingers dancing over the controls. His tone was level, all traces of youthful swagger replaced by a pilot in the zone. Approaching the LZ now, engaging descent thrusters. The Harpy's pitch shifted, a subtle drop in frequency that signaled the transition from cruise to hover. Beneath the aircraft, the Thames stretched out like a sheet of black glass, broken only by the downwash of the vectored turbines. The cloaked silhouette of the Harpy shimmered across the surface, flickering like a phantom predator circling from above. Zeus stood at the open side hatch, with Barry and Paul, visor forward, suit sealed. The wind whipped through the doorframe, carrying with it the cold bite of river air and the distant, sleepy hum of a slumbering London. Inside the Harpy, all lights had dimmed to combat mode. Cool, faint blue glows illuminating their gear with surgical restraint. 30 seconds until drop-off, Paul muttered, his voice barely audible over the wind. Zeus flexed his fingers, watching the nanomites ripple briefly along the contours of his gauntlets. The Mark IV Zeus armor had already adjusted for buoyancy. In his ear, Apollo's voice came through, calm and efficient. Systems calibrated. River temperature, 9 degrees Celsius. Trajectory, nominal. Zeus gave a subtle nod, calm, centered, ready. Barry moved to the edge of the door, muscles tight beneath his tactical wetsuit. Remember, no lights, no chatter, and for the love of God, don't lose your rebreathers. Copy that, Paul replied, voice focused. The river was now only a few meters below. Mist and spray licked at the side of the aircraft, catching in the cabin light like drifting smoke. The world narrowed to this moment. Barry raised his fist, held it, then dropped it as the jump light turned green. Go. One by one, the team leapt from the Harpy, vanishing into the black below.